Hello everybody, and welcome to my submission for the Festive Tech Calendar 2021. I love this event. It's a really fun way to end the year. Thank you to Gregor and everyone else who works behind the scenes to put this together, and thank you to the sponsors this year that aren't officially sponsors but are giving away a few things, and just the actual donation to the girls who code through this event. And thank you for putting all this on. So just a little bit about me. I'm going to be giving you a presentation today that is going to be released on the 19th of December, and it's in session 4 for the implementation of Azure Time Series Insights on Digital Twins to analyze telemetry data. So you can read more about it here as well. Ultimately, what I'm going to do is post a short blog that guides you through the steps, as well as a video that you're obviously watching. So you can refer back to that in the future. So let me just tell you a little bit quickly about me. So this is me. I am an MCSD and MCT. I have a few Azure certifications, and I'm an Azure MVP. And I love connecting with people. I'm an open networker, so if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do so. And let me know what you think about the presentation, or just connect, talk shop, or whatever. I'd love to hear from you. Additionally, all the material that we'll be covering today is going to be in my AB2S Digital Twins demo repo at GitHub under BL Gorman. That link will be available in the blog as well, so you can find it easily. The reason it's AB2S Digital Twins demo is because I started out with the first part of this for the Azure Back To School event in September, and we're going to be doing the second part today, which is the time series version. So if you go to the actual Digital Twins demo repo, there's a README that has a little more information on this as well. This does mean the first part of this presentation relies on having completed part 1. And so if you need to do that to get that set up on your machine, you'll want to take a look at this first video, the Azure Back to School Developing with Azure Digital Twins event. What that gave you was the ability to get set up so that you could have telemetry coming in from trailers, from a simulated trucking company where you are basically pretending to be a fleet manager, and you have trucks that are out there with drivers and the trailers need to have a certain temperature, and if they go over a certain temperature, you're going to want to throw a temperature alert, and that temperature alert then can be tracked in Azure Digital Twins. So what I'm going to do next is show you what that looks like as it's implemented after part 1, so that we're clear on the baseline for where we're starting on part 2. So currently I've already implemented part 1, which means, of course, I have an IoT hub, which has some devices on it. So you can name these, of course, whatever you want as you do it. Just make sure you keep track of everything so you'll have the ability to easily access them. And I've put everything into a Festive Tech Calendar resource group here so I can track everything easily as well. And you could, of course, do that on your own. The devices you're going to need are at least one, but likely more trailer sensors going. I have 3 going right now. Each one of those, of course, has an access key that I can use with my code. And ultimately, you also are going to need an event on this. The event is going to port telemetry data via an Azure function to the Azure Digital Twins instance. So of course, you need to have the function set up, and then you just add the event subscription and point this to the function, and it will basically fill in the blanks for you. The code for the function, as well as the function we'll be needing for today, so both of them are in the repo under the ingester. And I put them into one project just to make things easier. So I already have the IoT hub, telemetry injection, as well as the time series function that we'll need later. So here's my actual function that I've created. It does have the 2 functions for the ADT to Azure Time Series, as well as the IoT hub to ADT function. So the one running right now is the IoT to ADT function. And if we were to drill into this and see it running, we could see that there are events being run as we speak. If we look deeper into the live stream here, we can see a lot of data being ported from some simulators that I'm running. And the reason I know this works is because I have it running. And there you can see the data coming in. That also requires that the function app has the ability to write data to the ADT. So in order to do that, I need to have an identity on the function app. So if I go back to my function app here, and I look at my identity, you would see that I have a system managed identity. And because of that, I'm able to add it as a data owner on the ADT. This also allows me to wire up the function app from the IoT hub as an event. In the Digital Twins then, I have added my function app as an Azure Digital Twins data owner. If you forget to do this, your data won't port from the IoT Hub into the Azure Data Twins. And additionally, this same setup is needed to do from the Digital Twins into the Time Series later. So having this in place is twofold. It's the front end from the IoT Hub to the Digital Twins and the back end from the Digital Twins to the Time Series. Once you have this, you can do both ways. In the Azure Digital Twins Explorer right now, if I look at all of my twins, I've imported the data. Again, all of this is also available in the repo. So if you go back to the repo and you look at the data for the fleet models, here are my twins that I have, basically my models, excuse me. So here are the models that I've imported, and then also I've imported some bulk data. So I used the bulk load here to do the fleet bulk load JSON, which brings in the trailer sensors and stuff that we need in order to run the simulations. Finally, out there also is the trailer simulator, and that's what I've used to create 3 versions of the simulator and configured that in order to work against my Azure IoT Hub sending telemetry, which is then leveraging the function to port. And I can see that it's working because I can go to my temp alert query here and I can run this and I can see that different twins will be showing temperature alerts as data is ported in. So right now we saw sensor 1 and 3. Let's actually go back to true here and let's save that query. And we'll call this temp alert true because I accidentally saved it as false and I want to only show the ones that are throwing the temperature alert. So now the ones throwing the temperature alert are sensor 2 and sensor 3. And you can see that it does in fact change as time goes on. We're getting different sensors now throwing the temperature alert. So once again, now we have different sensors throwing the temperature alert. Now it's 1 and 2. So we know that our data is working from the front end, where basically we have the telemetry coming into our IoT Hub. We can see the IoT Hub messages are getting updated as we go, as this continues to run. The simulators itself, those are just .NET projects. The simulators are running and just sending trailer data to our IoT Hub, and those are connected via connection strings. And then each of these 3 simulators is running its own simulation against the trailer of its type. So this is 1, 2, and 3, obviously. So while those are running, I'm sending data to the IoT Hub. The event is triggered at the IoT Hub, which is then triggering the Azure function. The Azure function is running the function for the IoT Hub to ADT function using the event grid, and that is pushing the data into the Azure Data Twins instance. And that's only possible, again, because of the fact that we have set up the identity on the function and given it the Digital Twins data owner rights. So here, if we just see that we can see the total execution counts changing. This is the second function which we'll create as part of today's demonstration. Right now, of course, not executing any. For whatever reason, here we go. So now we have the total execution count of our IoT Hub to ADT function is definitely showing that it's running. And there is a little bit of a delay on this, but ultimately, right now, we know that we haven't done any triggering to the back end yet, and that's expected. But that basically talks about what we needed in order to get these set up. So again, we had the IoT Hub, 3 devices, event grid, event trigger to the function app. The function app has the ability to write to the ADT via the data owner role. The ADT itself has all the models and twins already loaded in place. And that essentially gets us set up to be able to continue on. So as long as you have all that, you could go on to part 2. If you don't have all of that, make sure you've got that set up before you continue on. All right, so now that we have everything in place, let's start building out the new solution. So in addition to the IoT Hub, we're ultimately going to need 2 event hubs. And those event hubs are going to be in one single event hub namespace. Now at the repo, once again, I just want to include this so you have this information. If you want to skip a few steps and make your life a little easier, you could come out here and grab this script. Now what this script does is it sets up your variables that you'll need. We need an event hub namespace, we need an event hub twins, an auth rule, time series name, and then time series auth rule. We're going to also create a Digital Twins endpoint and route. Now I'm going to do all of this through the portal today, but if you wanted to do this via the script, you could certainly do so. And just to be fully transparent, the stuff that we're covering today is completely available here at Azure, at Microsoft in the Microsoft Docs for the Integrate Azure Digital Twins with Azure Time Series Insights. So we're basically going to skip through some of this and get this implemented today so that we can see what this looks like. So that reference is here, as well as the script. If you just want to save time, just open up your AZ CLI and go ahead and run all of this with the correct variables. And you'll basically go through the next few minutes of this video. But I want to also show you how to do this in the portal. So that's why I'm skipping and doing this manually. So the first thing I'm going to do is create an event hub namespace. So in order to do this, I need a namespace. And we'll put that in our Festive Tech Calendar resource group. And then the namespace name is going to be the FTC ADT TS EHNS, which is, of course, easily rememberable, right? But that's Festive Tech Calendar, Azure Digital Twins, Time Series Event Hub namespace. So that's what that stands for. And of course, it doesn't really matter. It's just why I did that. So the basic pricing here that I'm going to choose the cheapest one I can find, hopefully, which is basic. And I'm going to keep it the minimum throughput units of 1. I doubt I'll need more than that. If you want to increase this, you can. Just know you're going to pay for that as you scale it. You can always scale it back down. And let's go ahead and create this namespace. All right, so it went ahead and created the namespace. So in the namespace now, I can do my event hub. So the first event hub that I need is the FTC ADT Twins hub. I'm going to go ahead and leave the partition count to just 2 here. You might need to move that up if you're going to do more things in the future, reading from it. So we'll create that event hub. And then notice we're still in the namespace. I want to go to the actual hub here, the FTC ADT Twins hub. And in the Twins hub now, so I'm in an event hub instance inside of my namespace. I'm going to create a shared access policy. And this shared access policy is going to have send and listen event rights. I'm going to name it FTC ADT Twins auth rule, and I'm going to go ahead and create that. That will give my Azure Digital Twins the ability to write data into this event hub. I also want to get the connection string for this. I'm going to need this for my function app. So I'm going to go ahead and get the connection string for the primary key. I'm going to save that on a notepad for later. All right, and so I have my event hub set up, and I need to go to my digital twins, and I need to create an endpoint and then an event route in order to route the telemetry data for changing twins into the event hub. So here's the endpoint. I'm going to go ahead and create a new endpoint. The name of this endpoint will be the FTC ADT Twins Hub endpoint. I'm going to go from an event hub in my subscription on my event hub namespace for the Twins Hub, key-based, and the authorization rule should fill in FTC ADT Twins auth rule. If that doesn't show up, you put your auth rule in the wrong place. This is, again, the Twins Hub. I'm going to save that endpoint. That looks like it's good to go. It's going to be key-based on the event hub, and then I'm going to create a new route off of that endpoint. So let's create the event route. The event route is going to be the FTC ADT Twins Hub route, without a space there. And then I'll use that endpoint as the endpoint. In the advanced editor, I need to change this. I need to add the following filter. Type equals Microsoft Digital Twins.twin.update. We'll save that. And then if you look at it, you should see, oops. If you look at it, you should see that filter type here. Otherwise, if this isn't correct, you will not get data ported into your event hub from the digital twins. So now that that's in place, I have a route in place, and I actually already built out my function earlier, but I don't have my function set up correctly. So what I need to do is add that configuration to my function. And one thing I didn't mention in the original one was that the Azure Digital Twins service URL is also included here as an environment variable. That was for the original telemetry, but it's also needed for this next part where we're going to run the second function. So that's just going out to your digital twins and grabbing this URL and ultimately putting that into your function app here. So I'm going to create a new application setting for my event here. So this is my Event Hub app setting for Twins. And the value is going to be that connection string that I got earlier. So while that's updating, let's take a look at the function quickly. So the function should start running here pretty soon. Let's go to the GitHub and take a look at it quick. So the function itself has an Event Hub trigger. We're going to go from the Event Hub that we just created, the Twins Hub, and that connection string is the Event Hub app setting Twins. It's then going to try to write to this time series hub, which is what we're going to use to ultimately have the time series display. So we don't have this set up yet, so that may cause a problem for our function firing, and that's okay. Ultimately here we have data that's basically just coming in and being translated into time series formatted data. So we're not doing anything real fancy here. We're just taking the object message and ultimately just translating it a little bit and then updating that out to the actual Event Hub. All right, in order to get this data then to continue on through the pipe and have the function execute correctly, we need to add that second hub. So let's go back to our Event Hub namespace. And in the namespace, let's add another Event Hub. And this one we're going to call the FTC ATD Time Series Hub. We're going to, again, just leave this at 2 for the partition count. And once we get there, let's go ahead and open the Event Hub in a new tab here so we can easily see this. We'll have the 2 hubs. We're looking at the Time Series Hub now. Once again, we need to add a policy to give auth access. And we'll do send and listen for this again. And the name of this one is the FTC ATD Time Series Auth Rule. And that's going to give us the ability to, once again, add this into the function. So we need this connection string for the primary key. Put that into your notepad so you have it handy in case you lose it. Go back to the function app, and in the function app, on the configuration, add another environment variable or application setting. This one's going to be called the Event Hub app setting TSI, and the value is going to be that connection string we just got. And we'll save that, which should redeploy the function. So once again, going back to the function, so we can just see this again real quickly. On the function itself, we have those 2 hubs that we've named, FTC ADT Twins Hub and FTC ADT Time Series Hub, with their connections. And this is what we've mapped in the settings for the environment variables. And then ultimately, once they're triggering correctly and wired up correctly, this function should run automatically via the Event Hub connections. So let's see if we're running at this point. There's our 2 Event Hubs. We do have messages, so this is a good sign. We're getting some messages here on the Event Hub for the time series. And if we look at the function here, let's see if we've got any data coming in. Yes, we're definitely getting some execution now of this function. So that means that our events are wired up correctly. And we could look at the logs here to see the data that's being written into the different pieces of the puzzle here. So important to note is that when we go to the next piece, we're going to need to key on specific parts of the model and be able to use that in our time series. But the last thing we need to do now is get our time series wired up now that we know we're porting data from the function as data is being changed. So we're still running our simulators just to throw data out there. And those simulators are just pushing temperature changes, again, into the IoT hub. The first function is grabbing that data and putting it into Azure Digital Twins. We're seeing that that data can change here in our Digital Twins Live. We added an update trigger to the Azure Digital Twins on the Event Hub. So whenever any of these models are updated, it's going to put data into that Twins Hub. And then we've created now the function from the Twins Hub to respond to that update trigger to then port the data for updates into the Time Series Hub. Yeah, pretty cool stuff, right? Okay, so we're done with Digital Twins. We're pretty much done with everything at this point except for Time Series. So let's go ahead and just do a time series environment. We're going to go ahead and create this here. So the name of the environment here could be anything we really want. We'll just call this the FTC ADT TSI environment. I'm just putting everything again in the East US. You can put them wherever it makes sense for you. I'm going to leave the tier as the Gen 2. That's what's recommended. You see there's an ingress rate, there's a storage capacity and estimated cost. The property name here is the most critical piece of the puzzle. So how do I get this? And also note that it is case sensitive. So remember how I said we were done with the digital twins? I was wrong. I forgot one thing here. So if we go back to our digital twins instance and we go back into the Explorer, in the digital twins, whenever we're looking at the twins, so here's a trailer sensor. Every single one of these trailer sensors is going to have this $DT ID as part of its twin property. And so that $DT ID is what I want to key on in my environment here. So $DT ID. And then the storage account will store the data as it's being piped in. So we want a cold storage and a warm storage ability here. So we want to make sure to enable the warm store so that we can see the data in real time. We're not going to do data lake storage in this case. We'll leave the default for storage v2 and local redundance. You can change those appropriately for your real world environments. My event source needs to be created. It's going to come from the event hub. The name is going to be the name of my event source. So just FTC ADT Time Series Events. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that on the namespace for the time series hub. There's my time series auth rule. It was just taking a minute to load. I was afraid maybe I accidentally created it at the namespace level and not at the hub level. And then the consumer group here, I'm just going to leave this to default. Now, if you follow the documentation, it says to go ahead and use your own consumer group here. But with my free tier, I only have one consumer group. So I want to make sure I don't try to create a new group and don't get data ported. I'm going to go ahead and port now, and the timestamp property name will just use whatever they want. So I'm just going to leave that. So I think we're good. Let's go ahead and double check networking and tags and create. So that's going to create my TSI environment. This also takes a moment to deploy. So I'm going to fast forward this part in the video so you don't have to watch it deploy. And the deployment has completed. And now that we have our time series environment, we can go ahead and see what's going on with the time series data. And provided we have everything wired up correctly, we should see some data coming in here. And we can actually go ahead and key on specific sensors and their specific data here. You can see the different telemetry that's been coming in and being ported into our time series environments here. So then we can maybe turn on auto refresh, see if we can keep this running in real time. And basically that's all there is to get the data from Azure Digital Twins and start getting it into your Time Series Insights. And then of course you could take this and do more with it in the future. You can save this as your default view or whatever. You can allow others to modify it if you want. And just for fun, I let this run while I went to lunch just so we could get some real long data in here and was able to get a bunch of data in. And so that's going to wrap everything up. But hopefully you found this information useful. Once again, thank you to Gregor and everyone for putting on this event. I've had a great time putting this data together to build out this demonstration. I hope, again, that it was useful for you. Please let me know in the comments or via Twitter or LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you as far as the usefulness. Once again, all the information will be available in a short blog post, as well as the link to my repo at GitHub. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of 2021 and an awesome 2022. We'll see you next time.